Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take you on a quick spin through the week's news. I'm Simon Head from over here in the UK, and on this week's show, the Vegas crew are back in force. That's right, MMA Junkie Radio's OGs, Gorgeous George and Goes, are back on deck, and fresh off furlough, even though he's still on vacation, is MMA Junkie's own John Morgan back in the house. So without further ado, let's get these guys on the clock. And where else can we start, guys? But with UFC on ESPN 12 this past weekend, Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker don't know how to be in a boring fight. So it was no surprise that their main event scrap turned into an absolute barn burner. People are talking about it as a fight of the year contender. But where does it rank in your 2020 fights of the year list? We've had loads of great candidates already this year, but which one is on the top of your list right now? Nice quick fire round to get us started. So just 2 minutes on the clock. George, you can lead us off.
All right. For me, it's number 2 to Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk back in March, UFC 248, I believe. That was pretty epic. It was for a title, the highest stakes there is in the whole game. So I'll give them the pass still, and not the pass, I mean the award, because it was a great fight. And this one was up there. I mean, another thing was the silence in the crowd. Just, it's incredible how much you can pick up. And even Poirier's, those hammer fists, I think it was at the end of round 1, just you could hear that, you know what I mean? And there was just a lot of slapping of the flesh, cracking of the bones. It was amazing. I was on the edge of my seat. And more than anything, my buddies that watch MMA casually, you know, when they have time, they're already asking when's the next one. So it ranks number 2, Simon.
All righty. Let's go for it, Goes. What do you reckon? Top of the list, or is something else above it?
You know what? As I open my mouth, I still don't know what I'm going to say because it was such a close race. George is right. It's probably between those two fights. One thing that was missing was the roar of the crowd. That's something that brings something out of you, that standing ovation at the end of a fight that you expect from everybody in the arena. There's just something to it, and it was missing in this fight. But at the same time, one of the cool aspects of this fight was the fact that if you look at how many celebrities, how many pro athletes from from the NFL, from the NBA, MLB, they were all watching this fight, all the eyes on this, telling people, you have to watch this. And it wasn't even for a title, guys. It's amazing that so many eyes were on this fight. The way it went down, I think I'm going to go with it is probably number 2 to Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, just because that one had a title on the line, and it's going to go down in history as probably the greatest women's fight of all time. So I'm going to have it at number 2.
Right. The siren has probably just about gone off. John, you have 0 seconds, so we'll play overtime on this one. Give us your take, seeing as the Junkie Radio guys have just stolen all of your time.
You guys suck. I didn't get any time at all. Dude, it's for me, it's Weili and Jędrzejczyk, man. That was the number 1 fight. I don't get to talk about it because we're not even on the clock right now. You guys are ridiculous. That was best. I will say one thing. You guys made one great point. I didn't think about how much the crowd had something to do with it. To me, it was the championship action. It was high pace for 5 rounds. I didn't think about how the crowd really affected it. Had I actually been in time and on the clock, I probably would have, kind of elaborated on that a little bit. For me, that's still the best fight of the year. You guys suck.
I went 40 seconds.
No, you didn't.
3 minutes for some reason.
Fix your clock. It doesn't even work.
He was on vacation. Maybe their vacation minutes are always a little bit longer. Right. Okay. We're going to be bang on point with this one. Platinum Mike Perry did things his own way, much like the Junkie Radio boys with their timing at UFC on ESPN 12, as he brought his girlfriend, Latori Gonzalez, to the cage as his lone corner person for his fight against Mickey Gall. He got the win, so he ended the night a happy man. But if you were advising Platinum, how would you get the best of him in his coming fights? He's a complex character, so I'll give you 3 minutes, guys. 1, 2, 3 minutes on the clock for this one. Goes, you can go first.
Well, it's very, very hard to criticize Mike Perry and the route that he took for this fight, because this was probably the best Mike Perry we've ever seen. He looked great, guys, in the striking, on the ground. He took the fight everywhere. His cardio was there. So it's really, really hard for me to come at him. I mean, one of the hardest things with Mike Perry is him being able to manage that aggression and then pulling back and being a smart fighter. And this night he had it all going on for him. So that being said, we all know that you just can't do it on your own. What I think Mike should probably do is maybe not look for a team and a group of coaches, but maybe dial it down and go to one coach. Kind of like how you see with Zahabi or even Dean Thomas, just one person that manages everything. It's two opinions. I think he could pull it off that way.
Awesome. John, you got a bit of time for this one. What do you reckon?
What a welcome change. No, you know what? Look, I, like anybody, was, I don't want to say critical, but concerned. I wasn't sure what kind of preparation we were looking at for Mike Perry, knowing that, he was saying Latore, his girlfriend, was his only coach. How true that was, I don't know. Maybe he was just playing a little game with us. Maybe he was preparing with some other people. But you know what? And hearing him talk afterwards and thinking about all the interviews and things that we've heard from him before, I think he kind of thrived in that environment of not having a coach yelling at him, not having so much information to process between rounds, not having so much, just extra stuff weighing on him other than what's happening in the cage itself. So on fight night itself, I don't know that it's not a bad situation for him. I don't know that maybe it doesn't work for him. That said, I think at some point, especially at the elite level of the game, it would catch up with you if you're not preparing with coaches, if you're not preparing with training partners, if you don't have a team. So, he mentioned the idea of potentially going to American Top Team. I like that idea. Get them down there, get the preparation in, get the rounds in, get the coaching in. But if you want to keep it that way on fight night, it might just work for him.
Yeah, what do you reckon, George? Was it a case of removing all that sensory overload and just being able to zero in on the job? Do you think this is a long-term thing for him, or do you think there's another route he should be taking?
Well, he definitely pulled it off, so you got to give him props for that. I think a lot of people were ready to bury him in case he didn't pull it off. Oh, boy, you were going to hear it from everybody. But he won, and like Goz said, he looked good, not just on the feet, where supposedly he was going to have an advantage. And honestly, Mickey Gall fought well in the first round on the feet. But then he mixed it up, so he showed us the complete, package of a mixed martial artist. So good on him. But at the very end, him talking about those taxes, stick to a state with no state income taxes for one. Get that sorted out because you don't want that opponent, Uncle Sam. That's the one that's really, really going to tear you apart. So I would isolate maybe Nevada, Texas, or Florida. They all have their advantages. They all have the friendliness of no state taxes. And Florida seems like the easy one. That's his home state. But one of those three, they all have great camps.
Awesome. Yeah, I heard him say after the fight that he wouldn't mind having Yoel Romero in his corner. Maybe a double act of Yoel Romero and Latore Gonzalez. That is the dream ticket for Platinum Mike Perry in future fights. But it'd be interesting to see what he does moving forward. Now, one of the things we want to talk about is the fact the UFC has made a huge success of hosting events behind closed doors since the COVID-19 pandemic. They've had a trio of successful shows in Jacksonville, and now they've just had 4 great shows at the UFC Apex. In July, all eyes are going to turn to Fight Island in Abu Dhabi as the Emirate hosts 4 behind closed doors events in July. And with things starting to gradually ease in terms of lockdown rules, the UFC may already start to be putting some provisional plans together for their first show back with fans in the building. My question to you guys is, when that time comes, what should that first main event be? What should they book to announce their full arena return? And where should that fight take place? Quick fire round, guys. Just 2 minutes on the clock, so keep them nice and short. John, you get to go first with this one.
All right, listen, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't know if the world has seen. We're not doing really good with this COVID-19 thing over here in the United States. We're kind of shutting some states down. So I hate to say it, I don't think we're going to have crowds anytime soon. With that in mind, I want to go with the fight that's kind of evergreen, right? A fight that would be great behind the crowd. And that's, to me, is going to be Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz, the trilogy fight, because I don't know when we're going to be able to have live audiences again. That's a fight that can happen whenever. It doesn't matter, what year it is, what kind of streak both guys are on. And man, those two, the crowds that they command, the attention that they command, it would be amazing. So I think about those two. When we're finally able to have crowds again, let's book that fight.
George, what's your dream post-pandemic main event?
Well, everything's pointing towards Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa not fighting towards the end of the year or maybe the beginning of 2021. But I was seeing that there was a big rugby game in New Zealand a few weeks ago. That country's got it together. I think they've gone 3 straight weeks with no infections of COVID-19. Do the stadium show there. Plus, you got Volkanovski. You got Dan Hooker. You got a lot of people, Kai Kara France, that you can build a nice stadium show around. And look, Paulo Costa doesn't strike me as the type of guy that is scared of hostile territory. So New Zealand stadium show, that's your pairing right there.
That is a great shout. Goes, what do you reckon?
Got to be the fight capital of the world, guys, Las Vegas. But I want it in that stadium, that brand new stadium. It's got to be Conor McGregor. And let's put the BMF title on the line, Jorge Masvidal.
Love it. Love it. But we don't know when that's going to be. Fingers crossed we get some fans in the building by the end of this year. But I tend to agree with George. I think it might be, if we're going to have to do it this year, it might have to be overseas with the way
January 2nd or February 6th. Bring back that Super Bowl show. We need to bring that back. That was good.
Love it. And final topic this week, as we just mentioned, Fight Island takes center stage as the UFC gets set to host 4 events in the space of 14 days on Yas Island. The 4 fight cards are packed with talent from the UFC's international roster, who are now back in the mix once again. But aside from those 4 headlining bouts, which of the undercard fights should people be getting most excited about? Give us one fight each, guys, and let us know why you're excited for that fight. 3 minutes on the clock to round things off. George, lead us off.
Okay, there's some really, really good ones, man, and I don't want to do what I'm often accused of, and that's taking them all. So I'll leave some for the guys. I'm just going to concentrate on Andrade versus Rose. That first fight was epic. Whether they were standing and seeing Rose's crisp boxing, honestly, she really has one of the nicest jabs out there. Puts together the combinations, and then of course with Andrade, when she wilds out, to steal the term from Mike Perry, and just explodes like a tornado, like old Vanderlei, Silva, and Pride. I mean, that's pretty exciting too, because it's a storm that comes your way, but Rose has obviously learned how to get through that. And then of course Andrade loves this to pick her opponents up and slams them. Rose had counters to that, so I really love the way the first one was going, where Rose had the paths to victory before getting knocked out with a slam. And I think they can just pick up from there. So I'm really, really interested in that one. I love the strawweight division.
Great stuff. Goes, what's your pick?
That's a really good one. I like that one too, George. But I'm going to have to go with Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski. The way I look at this fight, if you look at the first one, there needs to be a lot of improvement from Max Holloway. I think Max Holloway won a lot of fights just being a tough individual. This is the first fight where I think somebody tested him, made him have to make adjustments on his side. I don't know that enough time has gone by for Max Holloway to do that. So there's a lot on the line physically and mentally for Max. You don't want to have 2 losses against this guy. What would you do then? So it's got kind of an interesting storyline behind it. And, just the people that are behind Volkanovski and the run that those guys are on, I really want to see how that's going to play out here. Those guys are on a big roll. So it's a really fun fight. That's going to be mine. Big time
matchup. John, lead us home. What's your pick?
Yeah, listen, man, there's some big fights happening outside of those. I mean, those are great picks. How about Kelvin Gastelum versus Jack Hermanson? I mean, that's a big one in that division. Obviously going to shake some things up there. I also like Frankie Edgar versus Pedro Munoz. I mean, again, something that we're talking about with real significant rankings. And yes, by the way, I am going to pull a Gorgeous George right now and just name off a bunch of them. But that's okay, because I'm in the home stretch. So I get to name off those that were there. So I think those are all really big matchups, some of the most fun ones. But for me, the one that stands out to me, Alexander Gustafsson moving up to fight Fabricio Verdum, moving up to heavyweight. And to me, this is just a fun fight. It's something fresh. It wasn't a matchup that anybody was anticipating, but you kind of think that, it might be a chance for Alexander Gustafsson to kind of reignite that passion. I kind of got the feeling that in recent years, he'd kind of come to a stalemate basically in his position and where he was. He knew he wasn't going to get over John Jones. And so it probably, I think, impacted his motivation and his preparation and his execution. So now he gets a fresh start on things, and we get to see where Fabricio Verdum is at these days as well. So a matchup that I never saw coming together, but in a situation I never thought I'd see either. I like it.
Yeah, I'll chuck a couple of picks in. As the resident Brit on MMA Junkie, there are loads of Brits on these fight cards. Mark Diakiese versus Rafael Fiziev has got fireworks written all over it. Both a couple of wild strikers. Look out for that. And also Nathaniel Wood, the former Cage Warriors bantamweight champion, is welcoming the cousin of Khabib Nurmagomedov, the undefeated 12-0 Umar Nurmagomedov, to the UFC. That will be an absolute belter at 135 pounds. But there are loads of great fights on the undercard on the undercard of all 4 of those events. Be sure to check them out. And also be sure to check out MMA Junkie's coverage throughout the next couple of weeks as we lead you up to that quartet of events down there in Abu Dhabi. But for right now, that's all we've got time for on this week's edition of Spinning Back Clique. A huge thank you once again to John Morgan, to Gorgeous George, and to Goes, and chiefly to you guys out there for watching. Keep it locked to MMA Junkie, and we'll bring you everything you need to know as we lead up to all the big fights. And we'll be back again with Spinning Back Clique next week.